Rex is my name. It doesn't matter who I am, even though that's not my real name. I work as a private detective. What brings me here? To describe the utmost heated altercation between a wife and her lover in front of her lover. Now let's get going. A few weeks ago, I met a 45-year-old man named Steve. He appeared to be a wealthy man who had been struck by a truck. He requested that I look into the possibility of his wife Rebecca cheating on him. He gave me an envelope. It contained $10,000 in cash, her phone number, her car's registration number, and a picture of his wife. I felt both relieved and shocked. I started working. I trailed like a shadow behind Rebecca. She was a stunning woman with the perfect amount of curve. Considering that she had 3 children, her beauty astounded me. She was tall, thin, and really, really amazing. Jonathan Green, her lover, was tall, handsome, and married when I found him. Yes, he was married with children. I've never understood why married men captivate women in all my years. I never won anyone over. When I met Steve, I questioned him about using his wife's phone to install spyware. I sent his wife's lover some photos of her. Though his expression was dejected, I could see something else in them. He had the appearance of a man with nothing to lose. It wasn't very good. I did not want him to take any reckless action. I told him about my concern. His words were icy cold. "It's over if I kill my wife," he declared. "She has to face and live her life. Even if she wanted to, she couldn't pass away. I'm not going to let her go. Every night, I want her to lie in bed with her eyes open, waiting for the Grim Reaper to come get her." A couple of days had gone by. The photographs and call recordings were sufficient to secure an amicable divorce. They had been having sex thus far in the security of Jonathan's wife's apartment. The task of rigging that apartment was not easy. I needed to get them off my property. I talked to Steve, and he was well connected. And that's when he had an idea. He set up a meeting between Jonathan and his wife, Maria. To give you some background on Maria's family, her brother is a district judge, her younger brother is a boxer, and her father is rumored to have ties to the local mafia. We met her and laid out all the evidence for her, despite my initial reluctance. She remained emotionless and did not cry. After hanging up the phone, she asked Steve, "What do you want?" "They must pay," Steve said, glancing at her. As she put it, "They will." I clarified that her apartment was being used by the lovers. She said her younger brother would move into that apartment in 30 minutes. After taking a phone call, she turned to face us and said, "It's done." She declared that she would first file for divorce from her husband and then turn the matter over to her father. The couple was unaware of what was approaching them. When I was listening to the call recordings the following day, I discovered that they had made a reservation for a hotel room outside of the city. I told Steve. "Do what you have to do," he said, sending me an additional $5,000. "All I want is retribution." After some research, I discovered that they had a reserved room 2 days before their scheduled meeting. For permission to set up the room with covert cameras and microphones, I gave the manager $1,500. Everything was ready for the stage. I was in the adjacent room, hooked up to a cloud server via my monitor and headphones. As soon as the lovers entered the room, I began to record. They were creatures. They launched themselves at each other as soon as the room service finished. Steve received a link from me for the live stream. He sent it on to Maria. She thanked me in her response. The room's temperature was higher than I could have imagined. On the big bed, the couple writhed together. Sweat was bedecking their skin, and as they moved in unison, gentle groans could be heard from each of them. The man's hips moved in a rhythmic manner, cutting in and out of the woman's eager and willing love hole. Their cries of passion were augmented by wet sounds. Other than that, the room was quiet. They had spent more than 2 hours in their frantic yet measured session. They were working toward a third mutual climax, each of whom had already experienced at least 2 climaxes. Their tongues interlocked, taunting each other as their passion intensified towards their grand finale. Their mutual needs intensified, hands caressing and stroking skin. Her eyes closed as her internal sensations built up to her peak. She drew him in and gave him a firm embrace. Grinning, the man turned to face his conqueror. He repeatedly rammed it. He unloaded inside her and wanted to fuck her through this orgasm and into another. He was going to make sure she remembered this session, even though up until now she had refused to let him go all in. He brought her to another almost at the same time as she bit her lip and held onto him, his hips moving like a piston and her body exploding with her own orgasm. Her body was a jumble of feelings throughout. Deep within her, he slammed and held himself motionless before exploding and spewing stream after stream. Realizing they had advanced in their intimacy, she gasped as she felt it and opened her eyes wide to look at him. He leaned in to give her a passionate, hard kiss as they both relished the moment. They lay panting together in the post-orgasmic glow until he fell on top of her. Their breathing gradually returned to almost normal. They lay side by side, staring at the ceiling as he rolled off her, each lost in their own thoughts. There was no need for words. I crouched over the tiny screen, observing the couple's nude lay down on the hotel bed with a neutral expression. For my client, the machine was recording the scene. As I witnessed the impending marriage demise, I let out a sigh. Even as I get older, I can't figure out why a successful woman would want to ruin her own life in this way. God, she is such a foolish woman. With a relaxed posture, I perused the single word on my phone, send. It was finished. I watched the screen for the next act I knew was coming. My instructions were to keep recording until told to stop. I knew the husband of the well-fucked woman was going to enter the room any moment now. This was something I had advised him against, but Steve had been assured there would be no violence unless it was necessary. In that case, he would be defending himself. It was a risk, and he knew it, but I would have the action recorded and there would be a copy for him if he required it for any reason. Promptly, less than a minute later, as I watched the screen with the lovers still spread-eagled naked on the bed, there was a tap on the room door. The man called out and was answered with a curt room service. In response, he appeared to sigh but got off the bed and wrapped a robe around himself. He tossed the duvet over his lover as she remained lying on the bed. The man watched as he approached the door. Showtime, I thought out loud to myself as he opened the door, which was just out of shot on the screen. I could hear a muffled conversation, but I knew what was being said. My client had given me the gist of it, but I was still concerned about his reaction when face to face with the man who had made him a cuckold. I hoped my client would not be violent, but I was still nervous. The audio from the room grabbed my attention as I saw the woman suddenly sit up in the bed, wrapping the duvet around herself. I could tell from her body language that something was wrong. She was edging across the bed away from the direction of the doorway. Her lover came into view, backing slowly towards the bed. As his legs hit the edge of the bed, he slumped backwards and sprawled beside his lover, who was by now starting to cower and was repeating over and over, "No, no, no, it can't be, no, no, please, no." It was then that I saw the shining Walther PPK. I was too far away to stop whatever was happening now. I was glued to the chair, helpless. Don't do it, man, just don't do it, I thought. I wondered about my associate, where the hell was he? A feeling of dread filled me at the possibilities. The action in the hotel room was frozen as I looked on. The conversation was muffled, but the woman was now openly crying. The man sat with his arms up in surrender as Steve stood before the two of them. I listened in. Okay, first of all, we're done. Over. Finito. Got it? Understand me? No, it's not what it looks like. Shut the fuck up unless you want another hole in your face that your lover can shove his dick in. She cowered, shaking away from him. She had never seen him like this before. Then again, how many times had he caught her in bed with another guy before? His eyes bored into hers as she sat wrapped in the hotel duvet. Her lover got brave for a split second and moved towards Steve, the husband who had been praying for any excuse. Steve swiped the barrel across his head like lightning. The satisfying crack as the metal bounced off the side of his head brought a grim smile to the husband's face. The woman saw it and shuddered. Her scream startled him. He pointed the gun at her head. Listen, I have everything I need to divorce your ass and ruin this here and now. The only thing I haven't taken care of yet is a good beating for the two of you. Just don't give me more cause. Sit still and shut the fuck up. He paused, as if trying to calm himself down. I'm not a violent man, he smiled as he waved the gun between the two lovers. Anyway, I have decided that you will both pay, and pay dearly, for your fuckfests. You will not return to the house for any reason. There is nothing for you there, and I have no further need for you. All your possessions, such as they were, have been packed up and are on their way to your sister's address as we speak. You have no money, no credit cards, nothing. Understood? The woman just looked at him, dumbfounded. Understood? He waved the gun at her again. Yes, I understand, but what about? I don't need you to think or ask questions. If I think you need to know something, then I will tell you. Do you understand that? She nodded slowly, although many things were jumbled in her mind at the moment. She was as if in shock. The kids are fine, by the way, thanks for asking. They know what a cheating whore their mother is already, so don't expect any sympathy from them. They have already seen you being drilled by this prick. I would give them a few years to calm down if I were you. They were rather upset when they discovered you here, going at it. Yes, Rebecca dearest, they saw and heard you. That, I cannot and will not forgive. Your total lack of respect for our marriage and our children is totally unforgivable. She gasped. A sob escaped from her throat as she put her hand to her mouth. She had no idea her children knew. The realization started her mind racing. She failed to notice how her husband had been seemingly preoccupied and busy because she was too busy scheming and thinking of herself and her lover. He stared at her, letting his words sink in. Oh, did I mention that fuckwad's wife knows all about the pair of you too? Well, that will be a nice surprise. You can fuck in your lover when he comes around. We have used the same legal team for our respective divorces, of course. Saves money that way. She gasped again as the moan from the floor signified her lover was coming around. There you go. Why don't you help him? After all, you were in this together. Maybe you can work something out, he laughed. I now breathed easier. I could tell the anger was under control even from here, that is, unless the prick opened his mouth and said something stupid. On the screen, Steve looked towards the camera and smiled. That was the signal. Back on script. Thanks for that, he thought again. A quick text message was sent. I sat back and heaved a sigh of relief. As I watched the screen again, there was a tap on the room door, and a man walked straight in. He was wearing a long overcoat and a trilby hat. In his hand, he had 2 large envelopes. He approached the woman first. Are you Rebecca's son? She nodded sorrowfully before muttering, Yes, I am. Thank you, You have been served. He turned to her lover, who had managed to sit on the edge of the bed, now rubbing his head. Are you Jonathan Green? I beg your pardon, sir? Are you Jonathan Green? He nodded. Yes, damn it, that's me. He handed him a large envelope. You have been served, Mr. Green. In an instant, the server turned and vanished. Steve's son gave Jonathan Green a direct look. Jonathan Green could sense the hate in his gaze. Trying to turn his head away from those wolf-like grey eyes, he shivered. I'll have completely taken over your life by the time you realize it. You'll give your own wife her just desserts, but I'll get mine soon enough, buddy. You can take that to the bank. Your spouse is against you coming home. She returned her kids to her parents, and as you are aware, her father has the means to seriously ruin your life. Therefore, my man, I don't have to serve time in prison for you 2 liars. I'm about to part ways with you. Enjoy your life, and I'm sure you 2 will have some interesting conversations. I'll leave you 2 lucky people to it, then. He turned and walked out of the room after that. The intruders pondered what had transpired as they sat on the bed and looked at the envelopes in the door. With a great sigh of relief, I continued to watch. Reaching for his phone, Jonathan Green dialed his wife. That did not go well either, for from where she sat, nearly in a catatonic state, Rebecca Sun could hear the indignation in the wronged woman's voice. Jonathan realized the consequences had already begun and threw his phone across the room. Rebecca Sun began to react to his screams by screaming back at him. I observed the couple as they vented to one another about how their individual lives had fallen apart. "She disconnected from me," he exclaimed. "I told you, stupid." The scene was still playing on the screen behind me as I got up to rehydrate my scotch on the rocks. What a day, Jesus! Another content couple drives by. I downed the drink all at once. For years, I had spent most of my time watching scenes like this one unfold, but this one was the most intense. I was well known for getting the inside scoop on cheating spouses because of this. Even though I was the greatest, I still could not accept that another marriage had ended. Scenes from my own experience of finding my wife with my own brother began to recur in my memory. Remembering how that had not gone well either, I poured myself another. Since then, I hadn't spoken to my brother. My spouse attempted to portray it as an isolated incident. It was just sex, that much is clear. In the years that followed, I had heard it all countless times. I was unable to forget or forgive her. I had just left, got a divorce from her. Was I correct to act in that way? Absolutely. However, it hurt like crazy and was still hurting after 15 years. It ached still. I was aware of Steve Sun's likely feelings upon awakening alone in the morning. The chase was ongoing, but it served as a diversion from the agony of actually being alone later on. I looked at the screen after turning around. The woman was crying while lying on the bed by herself. You foolish bastard. You would be asking yourself why, if you were at all concerned. Your suffering now begins as well. Reaching over, I turned off the machines and began packing up. My cell phone began to buzz. I responded. Steve, are you all right? My man, you worried me a bit there for a while. Yes, everything is here, and I'll have it ready for you by tomorrow. I'll see you then. Goodbye. Until we speak again, kindly listener. In the event that you have read this far, kindly press the subscribe button. It will be very beneficial.